Okay, so now it's my super big pleasure to introduce, I'm going to stop sharing, our speaker of the hour. So for over a decade, Jim Barker has worked with organizations large and small across the United States, focusing on principle-centered leader behaviors as the center of a lean cultural transformation. Jim holds a degree in social science from the University of Washington and is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. Jim lives in Seattle with his husband and is a proud stepdad and grandpa. And I'm so excited to pass the mic to Jim, who brings a great energy and message to us today. So if I could find my stop share button, I'm so ready to get into this. Did I stop sharing already? I think I did.
You
I hope I
did.
did.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Talia. I am so glad to be with all of you here today. And I am thrilled to present on this topic of making it stick, how to sustain lean tools. It is the theme of this conference is all about lean tools. And I thought, oh, what better topic than making it stick? So we'll just get right into it. And I'm super curious and would love to know your feedback. So as you watch this presentation, hop into that chat and type in there your responses. Do you have trouble making lean tools stick? Maybe you've had some of these experiences that I'm going to share right now. So have you ever experienced some of these things? So let's just start with some of these provocative questions that we're going to have now. Have you ever experienced the use of an improvement tool across an organization in the hopes of dramatic results or dramatic improvements, but you've had limited results? So has someone come in with something like, oh, we're going to use a Kanban, or we're going to start with these idea boards or something like that. And or standard work or some other, like, God forbid it was a Japanese, a Japanese word. Kristen says, yes. Mess board, says Katie. Oh, I love this. I love the chat when the chat starts to blow up and people are like, what has been done to you, you poor people, right? Someone has come in and said, we have to do this across the whole thing. Kaizen, says Danielle. Exactly. This is where we have therapy in the chat. By the way, the chat is your therapy, I think. Yes, Kaizen has been done to us. So, and did that stick? Did you have limited results from these tools that have, initially been, deployed or done to you? Standard work that was not well drafted. Lynn says, yes, I try not to use lean terms. They may put folks on the defensive. Isn't that sad? Because lean is actually so amazing. And yet now some places can't even use that term. Stuck in the short term, not in the long, says Jacqueline, or revisited, says Joanna. Lynn says agreed. Joanna says not really continuing the process. Isn't it called continuous performance improvement? Yeah, exactly. Good results initially, then reverting to the former state, says Patricia. Exactly. Okay, how about this one? Have you ever experienced a series of point improvements without an overall strategy in linking those improvements together? So read that carefully. Have you ever experienced a series of improvements, but no overall strategy linking those improvements together? Has that ever happened to you? Like, we're improving things here and there willy-nilly, but there's no strategy. Like, we improved this, but it kind of ended messing up something over here, or these aren't really connected. Yes, 100%, says people, usually because of poor problem definition, no sustainability. Most of the time, says people. Jacqueline says, oh, yes, and this is happening in my work life right now, says Dano. Jim says, my life, with lots of eyes. Oh my gosh, right? Oh, here's Danielle. We're cutting staff to save dollars without a plan for sustainability of work count. Cutting staff is not lean, by the way. That's cost cutting. That's a completely different thing. Or worse, competing priorities across the enterprise. That's what Julie said, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Or everything is a priority, so then nothing's a priority. That's what Jennifer says. Excellent. You all have experienced these things. See how the chat lights up? It's amazing. Okay. How about this last one? This will get you going. How about resistance to improvement efforts due to past failures and programs that have not sustained? We've already heard this. Some people can't even use the word lean. I had that experience when working in government. Don't use the word lean. That's where, and I'm like, do we need to hold up the doll and say, show me on the doll where lean has hurt you? It's just therapy. Have you ever experienced resistance because of past improvement efforts that haven't worked? What are people saying? Eden says, we've had a Fix What Bugs You initiative that produced lots of disconnected improvements. Not sure that's to the test of time. Another department making changes that affect me and disrupts my work, says Dano. Okay, Carrie, I made her laugh. I'm here to make you laugh a little bit, right? I had a boss who didn't like the word problem, says Beth. Can you imagine a boss that didn't like the word problem? How do you do how do you do lean with that? Anish says, what's in it for the employees for lean? Like, yeah, exactly. That's a great question. Jacqueline says, too true. Dano says, a previous coworker was like that. This is why we're in the position we're in now. You are all fantastic. Here's initial resistance. Patricia says, but the champion CEO is all over, so the resistance is temporary. Yeah, so good. I can't read all these, but this is gold. I love the chat. So this can make your day feel like you're pouring coffee into this kind of mug, right? An UGG mug. Do you feel this way every day? And how long are we going to accept the excuse like short staffing or COVID? At this point, the reasons for improving the work just sound like excuses, right? So it's pretty much like, come on, we got to really get to this. And, we're tired of just coming into work and feeling like, it's the same, we got to start making this stuff stick. And how do we do that? How do we start really getting to the root of these things seem to work at first, but then something happens. Why is that? Why? What's the point? What is in it for the employees? I love what Anish said. What is in it for, Anish says, what's in it for the employees for lean? I love that question. Why do we do this? What's the point? The perfect question. So what's in it? Joy. Let's talk about that word. Joy has two definitions, two sides of its definition. The first is pretty obvious. The first is the emotion evoked by well-being, good fortune, or success. Of course, if you were successful, if you had something good happen to you, you're going to experience an emotion that we would call joy. There's a lot of other words for that emotion. But the second definition is really cool. By the prospect of experiencing what one desires. In other words, hope. We experience joy when there's hope, when there's the prospect of expressing what one desires. So if there is hope in your job, if there's hope in the work that we're doing, you have the experience of joy. So when we have a job, when we have most of our life, 40 hours of our week, and there's no hope there, we're having a joyless experience. But when there is hope, gosh, things could get better. I can contribute to that. There's a sense of joy in the work that we're doing. Human beings love to experience and contribute to worthy work. And we want to do that and experience joy, which is the hope that we can do a good job. So this is a really important aspect of the work that I know lean is really about. How did we get here? This is an example of the worst PowerPoint ever created. If you look that up on the internet, it's pretty hilarious. And it is from the government, of course. That the worst PowerPoint ever made. Isn't that hilarious? Joylessness didn't start looking like this. So how do we get into this mess? It didn't start as the worst PowerPoint ever. I know, isn't it hilarious, Whitney? I'm like laughing at this PowerPoint. How many of you have seen PowerPoints like this in government, right? Everyone is laughing. My eyes. The chat is lit up with hilarious comments. I love it. The worst I ever made. And how do we fix it, right? So how it looks like we're trying to improve things, right? Are we just going to write a company memo to try to improve things? It seems like that's always the suggestion. But we have to do so much more to do it. Certainly we certainly can't improve things with the lame advice that we seem to get so often. Oh, Clippy, what a blast from the past. Julie, I'm glad you remember Clippy. I don't think that the young people even know Clippy any longer. Oh, Carrie says, I love Clippy. I hated Clippy, but I had to bring it back just for you. So you're not alone. Most continuous improvement efforts fail. In organizations, leaders are responsible for results. Employees deserve meaningful work. Most organizations have attempted some type of enterprise-wide improvement effort. And surprisingly, most organizations experience a series of programs rather than a philosophy of improvement. This is research that is done by the Lean Enterprise Institute. And we see that most continuous improvement efforts fail. It's a fact that's out there in the United States, that is. So you're not alone. It's maybe even part of the cycle that we need to fail forward. Here are some of the three conventional approaches in trying to take on continuous improvement. There are sometimes people think of these as stages that a company goes through. Sometimes there are approaches that don't really work. The driving to results, the quick win, and the program approach. So I'll show you these three types, and you can kind of imagine if your company or your organization or your division of government have done any or all of these, and you can kind of imagine, what has been the impact. So there's first one is called driving to results. So when you see that orangey yellow button there that says KPI, that means key performance indicators. In other words, it's the results. So what are the results that we're going for, or the KPIs, the key performance indicators? And those can be quality measures, those can be morale of your employees, those can be financial metrics. A lot of times that's really what they are. So there can be a lot of different KPIs or key performance indicators that a company is going for. So when you have the driving to results mode, this is where you really don't have an improvement effort, and it's really a dynamic or a charismatic leader that drives the results. So you have a really amazing owner or a CEO, or you have a manager, or you have someone who's really fantastic, and they're the ones who are really driving all the results. And so it's a super innovator that's there. And when the innovator is gone, or when that leader is gone, then everything else is gone. So the outcomes of this approach can be amazing. Success is but the success is dependent on the leaders that are there. And the workers can sometimes be expendable or underdeveloped. So the leader is really dynamic and amazing, and the people are there to support them. They can be a lot like acolytes. They can really worship that leader, but the people that are working for that leader often aren't really developed or, built into amazing leaders themselves. There can be a lot of fear and blame in companies like that. We see this a lot in technology companies where there's a really innovative, inventive leader, and then a lot of people that are sort of their acolytes. And the company ends up being slow to adapt to a changing world. So the initial idea is really fantastic, but as things change, as the world advances, if that leader isn't able to keep up, the rest of the world, they can be outmoded pretty quickly. Next, we have the quick win. So another stage that happens is people realize that doesn't really work. And so they say, oh, we need tools. We need tools, and we're going to implement these tools so that we can get to those results a little better. And so this is the solution, search for solution leads to the discoveries of these tactical methods. And so we find these tools like the Kaizen everywhere. Let's just do Kaizens. Whatever that Japanese word even means. I'm not even going to explain it, but whatever it is, or, pick another Japanese word you don't know what it means. So the outcomes are, sure, we use these tools in the organization, and there are some small wins that are achieved. But then people resist the tools and they start to hear, not another Kaizen. Oh my gosh. And there's a lack of ownership. Who owns the tool? Well, I guess my CEO or my manager will tell me when we're going to do another Kaizen or another Kanban or whatever the heck it is. And there's a lot of distrust and a feeling of this too shall pass. We'll just have to wait for them to get over their Kaizen, their weird Kaizen, craze. And then there's decreased empowerment because it's not our idea as the employees, it's management's idea to do these things. And, I can't wait for that to be over. And then in a few months, we'll get another weird idea that we'll have to put up with for a few months, right? Does this happen? Yeah, I have live people in my room with me and they're nodding as well. So this totally happens. Yeah, Beth says resistance to the tools. John says small steps lead to big changes. That's true. So here is what happens with the quick win. Oh, Christopher Hicks Green. Christopher says, I've been guilty of this myself. Me too, I've done it. I am guilty of participating in, being a victim of, and perpetrating all of these. So that's why I know them so well. So when we have the quick win, we do this in all kinds of ways. We're like, we need a new IT system. We need a new sales system. We need a new this system or that system. And we end up implementing these systems in an organization. And then they're only optimal for a certain amount of time, and we need a new system. And so you see organizations go in these 3 to 5 year cycles of implementing new systems after the old systems don't work. And a lot of times there are, only a single improvements are only happening in the single digits, because these big, fast improvements are, huge, but then their ultimate, improvement level is so low over the long term. Continuous improvement is much slower. So I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, but you miss out on these big improvements, these big apparent improvements in the short term. But over time, the continuous improvement, what is different is the continuous improvement steps are small, but they sustain. And that sustainment over time builds and outpaces the conventional improvement. The issue is always that when we measure the return, when conventional businesses, this isn't true in government, which is why government is really primed for the continuous improvement. In regular business, it's hard because annual returns are often measured in the short term, and it's hard to give up these 5 or 10 years of apparent returns for continuous improvement. But over time, this continuous improvement far outpaces this big and fast improvements that are there. So it's yeah, that's exactly right. So Diane says quick wins usually turn out to be band-aids, not a real solution. That's exactly right. Continuous improvement ends up being real learning. And when you have a failure, so right near the C here in continuous improvement, you can see a little backsliding. You're only going to backslide as far as your small incremental improvement, rather than a big backslide like you see when things are, outmoded or start to decline. So it's an interesting comparison. All right, so the quick wins give way to the program. So this is where people say, okay, we need a program. So let's implement the quality assurance program or the lean program. So we start to say, okay, we saw some wins with the tools, but our real problem is we don't have a program. And so we start to say, let's have the leaders be in charge of a program and make the managers in charge of the tools and push that onto the people. We don't even and push into the results. And so what happens here is We see all these different programs that have happened. We started with total quality management or quality circle initiatives or Six Sigma or lean or high reliability organizations or operational excellence. And we see all these programs that keep showing up and then going away and showing up and going away. And we keep changing the names and it's the same kind of ideas, but with different programs. And because we keep changing the programs and leaders leave and new leaders come in and it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes, it's very similar. The actual rate of improvement is very low when the possible rate of improvement could be very high if we had just stuck with total quality management in the very beginning and improved upon that over time. But, we don't tend to do that. We tend to want the latest, greatest, coolest. Oh, now it's high reliability organization. Let's do that. So what happens here is some wins are achieved, but we get a lot of complacency. A lot of people saying, oh, it's another management flavor of the month. There's a lot of teaching, a lot of people like me who are hired to teach people things, but there's not a lot of learning that's embedded within the organization or a culture of learning. There can be a lot of resentment. Who has had this experience? I have had these ideas 5 years ago. I had these ideas 10 years ago, and no one listened to me. So there can be a lot of resentment. And the worst thing that can happen is culturally invasive. You could have been in an organization that had a really great culture or the potential for an amazing culture, and you have some lame consultant that comes in and kind of destroys the culture with one of these programs. That I've seen happen, and it's been super sad. So these are the things that the program approach can wield upon an organization. I love the chat. It's so good. Carrie says, in our organization, CPI is one of the pillars of high reliability organization. Gives the opportunity to spread Lean Six Sigma to the front line itself. Yeah, and they can be used really well. Don't get me wrong. When these are done well, they can be awesome. But they can also, like we've seen lots of organizations in the Puget Sound region that have gone through many of these iterations and have gone away when the leaders go away. So what happens, at big hospitals and big organizations when the leadership is gone and there's no one pushing to do continuous improvement? Every one of us can think of organizations where the continuous improvement program has gone away because of that. I'm not going to name names, but you've all known an organization where that's happened. So it's super sad. Okay. Talia.
Yes.
So we're going to give a little example here of the tools. What happens when you bring a program or a tool to your organization? We're going to do a little role play here, me and Talia. We're going to show you what it's like. Okay, so Talia, would you invite my husband and I to dinner?
Jim,
would you be willing to do that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Jim, oh my God, it's been so long. Hey, I was wondering if you and your hubby would like to join us for dinner this Friday night.
Oh my gosh, Friday, that would be great. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So everyone, Talia just invited Richard and I to dinner. That sounds awesome. Talia, what are you making for us for dinner? What are you cooking up?
I'm going to throw down on some seafood pasta.
Wow. Totally score, everybody. We're getting seafood pasta on Friday. Let's just invite everybody. You can cook for 417 people, right?
I think I can swing that.
All right, let's do it. Okay, we're all going to Talia's house for seafood pasta on Friday. What should I bring as a guest to Talia's house, everybody? Put it in the chat. What should a good house guest for dinner bring? Wine. Look at everyone, wine, desserts. Mostly it's wine. I see how you all are. We have 418 people. Lushes. Oh my gosh. Flowers, a chair. Okay, a house plant. Okay, it's wine, right? Maybe some bread. Whoever says bread knows me.
Gotta have the bread.
Wine and bread. Okay, you all have some great suggestions. Okay, so you're right. I should bring wine, maybe some bread. We should bring flowers. An apology for inviting 400 people. Okay, Carrie wins for being. Carrie should go into stand-up comedy.
Everyone gets their own bottle.
Yeah, exactly. 500 bottles of wine, says Josh. You would have a total setup. It's awesome. Okay, what do I bring? As seen on TV, the organic green pan food slides right off. These green pans are the best pans to cook with. I am so glad to bring these to your house. The organic green pan as seen on TV. You're making everyone in the classroom laugh, Katie. That was hilarious. Okay. Okay, so how do you feel about that, Talia? How do you legitimately, authentically feel?
Um, I authentically feel confused, and I'm
Okay,
just going to set these over here.
you feel confused. You're going to set these over here. So you'll be polite, but you'll also, okay, after Richard and I leave, after all 400 of us leave, what is, oh my God, the chat is on fire. This is
I'm going to
hilarious.
wonder if you had a few bottles before you came over.
You're going to wonder if I had a few bottles before you come over. That's awesome. Okay, so pretty much, oh my God, Christine pretty much immediately goes on by nothing. Exactly. Hilarious, right? So the chat is making everyone in my classroom laugh out loud. It's hilarious, right? Yeah. Read the chat. Now, thank you, Talia. You're awesome. Everyone, seriously, like it's funny, right? Go back and read the chat because this is what happens when we show up with standard work for everybody, Kanban, when we show up with lean tools. This is what happens. We show up in the workplace and we say, we're going to do a Kaizen. Or we're going to do standard work for everybody. This is what happens. This is what we're doing. We invited you to dinner. We're making pasta. We put our heart and soul into the work we're doing. And you show up with some harebrained tool that you saw on TV because you went to a workshop. And everyone is like, what are some of the comments? What are people thinking? You're a weirdo, right? Maybe they didn't ask for it. Maybe you should have brought that before she cooked. Maybe what do people say? Makes you a weirdo. I love that one. These are actually really good pans, says Shannon. Okay, so Shannon has used them. So some people might be like, that's actually a really good system. I've used it at another company and it's actually good. Jonna said, interesting, maybe you know her, right? Norma says, then she has something to hit you in the head with, right? So when I bring standard work, it's something to stuff in your mouth, right? So basically you're regifting her what your mom gave you, says Carrie Ann, right? Clueless, headless, says Joanne, right? So this is what people think about us when we bring them these out of touch tools that aren't actually what people are asking for, right? Isn't that interesting to think about? It's a new way to think about what we sometimes do with lean tools. So we need a new path, a new way to make, this is why lean tools don't stick. Because they don't stick to the pan, not because it's a green pan is why they don't stick. That's why food doesn't stick. Why lean tools don't stick is because we often are bringing a solution that is either doesn't fit or we don't understand. So we need a new path. So what is an organization? Is it the metrics? Is it the cubicles? Is it the buildings? Right? Oh, Kelly has a great comment. She's been in a work group where this happened. Felt like the person bringing it in just shoved it down our throats, just trying to come across like they were better than everyone else, more educated, more informed. The eye rolls were huge. That's right. What is an organization? It's the people. An organization is people, whether it's a manufacturing organization, whether it's a governmental organization, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a school, where I am now, whatever it is, it's people. And what are those people doing? They're working with people. And what are they doing? They're serving people and they're serving the world, especially if you're in government. You're serving people and the world. So what is lean really? What is lean really? It's making work more human. Lean makes work more human because it's all about the people. That means that lean fits the process to the person, not the other way around. It does not fit people to process. It fits process to people. That's a very important distinction. I don't bend over to the process bends over to me. I'm not in service of the system is in service to me as a person. Physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally. Why? Why would we do that? Why would we change process so that it fits the people? Because when we do that, it dramatically improves our business results over time. Over time. Lean is not something that happens like that. Oh, I love the hearts in the chat. Thank you. Lean is grounded in principles. I use these 9 principles. These principles are universal truths that inform the behaviors we practice, the systems we develop, and the methods we use. And we'll get more into this. And you have this as a download anyway. What lean is really organizational fitness. And like a fitness program, you know, it's very hard to stick with. It's like the important, unurgent stuff that businesses must do. So let's talk about principles. Principles are universal truths that govern consequences. Not understanding or ignoring these guiding principles will put a company out of business, will put an organization within government, you know, it will create an organization within government and make it not function, will make it highly dysfunctional. So when we have the principles, these are like, you can think of the principles like the rules of, like the laws of physics. There's been a tremendous amount of planning, experimenting, observation, documentation around these principles that are essential for an organization to be successful. They've been collected into a group that are known as the lean principles or the principles for continuous improvement or business principles. If any organization that's successful will be seen as following most of these principles. Organizations like Toyota, like Autoliv, like many other organizations that are highly successful are going to be following many of these principles. And organizations that fail, you'll see that they have violated many of these principles. So they're like the laws of physics for a functional business. And they're counterintuitive, and I teach them in this order. Many people go to the end. They like these improve principles. They'll go directly to always strive to improve or embrace standardization or solve problems scientifically. I always start at the other end. Respect for people, lead with humility, learn continuously, because that's where you have to start in order for the rest of the principles to be enabled and to actually happen. So it's really important for that to happen first. So, and next we have behaviors. So we have something called the KPI, or the key behavior indicators. So understanding the principles will help us identify ideal behaviors. And so we put the KPIs in there. So what's an example of a KPI? So there's this principle called systems thinking. And so systems thinking is understanding the system. It's one of the examples of a principle, is understanding the system at play, not just the blaming a person, right? Sally didn't do the thing, you know, because she's a terrible person. Not just because she's a terrible person, she did the thing because there's a terrible system at play. And so let's understand the system to understand if this fictional Sally person is, you know, terrible, or if it's a terrible system. What kind of behaviors might we see if the leaders and everyone around them were really practicing these principles? And so here are some of the behaviors we'd see. Leaders would eliminate the barriers that prevent the flow of ideas, communication, collaboration. Managers would involve upstream and downstream areas for the design and redesign of systems for improvement. And the front line would include all the staff and identifying the causal factors for problems and ideas for improvement, or in other words, group problem solving. So that's an example of the behaviors we might see if everyone really understood systems thinking. So what do you want? What are the behaviors for the rest of the principles, Jim? Yes. So there's a free download. If you get out your phone, you can take a picture of this QR code, and it will give you the behaviors for the first 3 principles as a little intro. And I invite you to read that 5-page document. That PDF is free for you to look at. It's my own writing, and you can understand my take on those first 3 principles and the behaviors that go with them. And then my contact information is there, and I'm happy to talk to you more about what it means to get into the principles. But even those first 3 principles, I consulted with an organization, and all they did was work on lead with humility, learn continuously, respect for people. And just that by itself was enough for them to radically transform their culture and see a huge increase in their profit margin because their culture was transformed. So just those first 3 principles can make a huge difference. So I'll start you there, and enjoy that download. And thank you for putting it in the chat, Orion. That's awesome. Of course, you're welcome to the free download. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, and then what's next? So we have the principles, we understand the behaviors. Next, we have the systems. So once we have the principles and the behaviors, now we can build systems that support and enable ideal behaviors. So if we want good behaviors, if we want behaviors that are done in certain ways, now we can build the systems around that. And so an example of a system is like a management system. We want people to behave in standardized ways and use standard work. We create a management system around the standard work. And if we can't follow standard work, we would have an online response system, not to judge people or to make them bad, but to say, hey, I can't follow the standard work. And there's a signal that would have an offline response system to say, why weren't we able to follow standard work? And an escalation, process that's already set that would help us, respond when we can't follow the standard because something is off. There would be a huddle and a control board with continuous improvement every day. So we'd see how is the operation functioning? How are they doing? And then there would be an executive visibility wall where we would see how is everything functioning and how is the leaders' work going and how are they improving things? And so this is all part of a management system that is interconnected, always on, always communicating. And this system helps to support ideal behavior of standards and communication and continuous improvement. And this is a very quick diagram, but it's this idea, one of the examples of systems. There are many other systems, but this is a comprehensive system that helps support ideal behaviors. Once we have a system in place, then the tools make sense because tools are really there to help us follow principles. The principles are understood, the systems are designed to support behavior. The customer-facing employees create and pull for tools. So where did a Kaizen even come from? A Kaizen was invented by someone at Toyota on the shop floor saying, let's get a bunch of people together and work on this together. A Kanban was invented by someone on the shop floor at Toyota. That wasn't invented by some magical lean god in Japan. That was someone on the shop floor at Toyota saying, it would be really helpful to have a brightly colored card that tells me when I'm almost out of stuff. So these tools were created by regular people like you and me. They were created by workers on the floor, and then they're adapted in other companies. So I feel like in the United States, when we bring lean here, we look at these tools and we say, these are the lean tools. No, lean tools are things you invent because you're following principles and you figure out what works for us to follow the principles and to follow ideal behaviors. Here are some of the lean tools that have been invented by people in the past. A visibility board, known as a Kanban board, another weird Japanese word. Doesn't matter. We can call it a visibility board, an improvement board. We can call it a whatever the hell you want board. We have them on digitally. We have them, on an actual whiteboard. There's also standard work, which is sometimes standard work is very complex like this. Sometimes when you're at a McDonald's or a Burger King, it's just pictures of how to assemble a hamburger. So standard work is not a lean principle. Standard work is a tool under the principle of standardization. And it helps us do things the same way every time. Standard work is also super flexible and it changes all the time. If it's standard work, if used correctly, is something that changes all the time. Okay, so then we have the results, the key performance indicators. So we can't do anything about the results. Really, the results are already done. It's a lagging indicator, they would call it. It's a result, it's already happened. How do I change the results? Like once we have a financial, result, it's like, or an employee, this is the one that kills me, the employee engagement survey. Does anyone have employee engagement surveys? They were always such a pain. Employee engagement surveys. Once those employee engagement surveys come out, then what happens? It seems like leadership is always putting like and I think they're great, but they're always then going back to the employees. They're going backwards to the employee saying, all right, we need new tools, right? Yeah, employee engagement. So let's talk about that. So first, exactly, we'll talk about that. Georgia, what happens? Nothing. Okay, so what happens? So who owns these things? Strategic leadership employees. These are like the C-suite or the executives. They need to own the principles and the behaviors. When I say ownership, what I mean by that is ownership means they lead the collaboration. They collaborate with the managers or with the supervisory employees and the customer-facing employees. Everyone works together to create this. The supervisory employees, the managers, directors, they own the systems that support ideal behaviors. And the customer-facing employees own the tools. And the KPIs are just the data that shows you, okay, here's the data, right? Nobody owns the KPIs. The KPIs are the results that are like, okay, based on our understanding of the principles, our systems we have in place, and the tools we're using, here are the results. So when we do that, instead of going backwards to look at the tools, an organization, if you wanted to make lean tools stick, would go up and we'd say, okay, we got these results, we got these surveys in. And if we don't like the results of the survey, do we understand the principles? And do we understand our behaviors? Do we understand our behaviors? If we change, and if we deeply understand the principles and we modify our behaviors, the key behavior indicators are the leading indicator for our results. So if we want better employee engagement, we need to understand respect for people, learn continuously, and systems thinking. And so if we understand those principles and we can understand what the behaviors are behind those principles, we can then modify our systems, ask the managers and the supervisory employees to say, what can we do to help enable these particular behaviors that we think would, make the employees more engaged, then the employees can say, here are the tools that would help us act in ways that are more aligned and help us be more engaged. So that's how that cycle would work. Rather than going back the other way and say, hey, employees, be more engaged, which is usually what happens. Does that make sense to people? So how do we sustain this cycle? Kristen, makes so much sense. We sustain this by embedding psychological safety in an organization. Katie says, you can't just tell people to be engaged if there's no buy-in for them. That's true. So psychological safety. What is psychological safety? It's a shared belief held by members of a team that it's okay to take risks, express ideas and concerns, speak up with questions, admit mistakes without negative consequences or any fear of negative consequences. As Amy Edmondson says, it's felt permission for candor. Psychological safety is so important. You can have an organization that can be anywhere on this 4-part chart. You can have high psych safety or low psych safety. You can have high anxiety or low anxiety or accountability, sorry. High accountability or low accountability. And if you're in one of these areas, you can have a company that's in the comfort zone, the apathy zone, the anxiety zone, or the learning zone. We're going for a company with high psychological safety, where it's okay to say, oh my gosh, I screwed that up, or this isn't working, and high accountability. Hey, I'm really accountable for things. Most people want accountability. That puts us in the learning zone for a company. If you have low accountability and low psychological safety, you're in apathy. And there's a lot of fear, errors, and theft that can happen in an organization in the apathy zone. If you have a company that's high accountability and low psychological safety, so I can't really admit errors or anything, there can be a lot of bullying, infighting, and profit is more important than people. If you have high psych safety, but low accountability, so yeah, people love me and we don't really need to get anything done, then you can have a lot of waste, a lot of slowness, and a lot of confusion. But if you're in the learning zone in a company with high psych safety and high accountability, you can have a lot of profitability, development of people, and a lot of joy in your organization. And people can show up, anywhere in the middle here. Not few companies are way in the corner. A lot of them are somewhere in the middle, somewhere in this 4-square. So this is a great 4-square to sort of do your own evaluation with your people. One of the workshops that I do, we do a organizational assessment by sort of saying where people think they are by putting stickers up on one of these 4 squares and then talking about it. So when we have this principle-centered outcomes, we have slow gains at first. So this requires an investment mentality. We have learning at all levels. This is really culturally relevant because we invest in the culture of the organization, the good parts of the culture that are already there. It creates synergy and self-sustainment and exponential growth and improvement. And a continuous improvement culture begins to form. So it's a very cool way to make lean tools and lean culture really stick. Some myths and facts about lean. The myth is lean is a quick way to cut costs and gain efficiencies. That is a total myth, not what lean is. If you want to cut costs and gain efficiencies, then go ahead and do layoffs and cut your costs. And don't call it lean, please. Call it something else. Call it cutting costs and laying off people. Lean is a long-term investment in the future. It is an investment. You have to pay money and invest in lean, just like you would invest in any other thing that you would pay money for. The myth is lean is just about the tools. Oh, that's lean tools or the lean process. No, lean is a cultural transformation. That's what it is. Katie says it's inefficient to lay off your workers. The process suffers more, not less. That's 100% true. Lean can be delegated to others. That's the myth. The truth is, lean involves everyone at the organization, especially the leaders. Lean is only applicable in certain industries such as manufacturing. That is not true. Lean is applicable in any and every organization. I've consulted in medicine, retail, hospitality, education, government, you name it. Lean is something to learn once and is known. Nope. Lean is a journey of lifelong learning and application. I'm still learning. That's what makes it so fun. The principles are like a hologram. They just keep unfolding themselves, and the truths of them keep revealing themselves. It is absolutely amazing. Okay. Take a breath. Everything's going to be okay. So where do we start? We begin with leaders, because leaders set the culture. The strategic executives start learning, and leaders learn by doing. So I start with a LEAP program. The Lean Executive Advancement Partnership is something that I co-wrote and helped develop, and applying the principles and behaviors at work. And then leaders begin teaching. Slowly, they start teaching and coaching their direct reports, and it grows from there. Oh, Amberlynn, that's a great question that we'll answer at the end. And a lot of you are thinking this, Kristen says, especially leaders. Who's thinking, my leader isn't here? I wish my leader would have seen this. Where is my leader? How do we engage our leaders? Who's thinking that right now? So many of you. I can tell that of the 404 people are here, 250 are thinking this, if not more. Here's the answer. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Lean leadership is not limited to a role or a position. Everyone is a lean leader. So here are the things that I hear from leaders. A little bit of gossip. Are you ready for the gossip? My staff is resisting these ideas, Jim. Can you please train all of them for me? That was a executive VP of merchandising, who was frustrated because she was like, I can't seem to get through to my staff. This is an executive VP. Like, they're struggling. Nobody listens to me, says an owner and CEO of a company. She was frustrated because she's like, they'll listen to you. They don't listen to me. Here's a CEO. The board members seem to think they know how to do lean better than we do. Right? So the executives have a hard time. I'm trying to learn from my customer-facing people, but when I show up, they just freak out because I'm the big boss. Right? Or this CTO, everyone's on board, but I think they're just saying that because I'm the chief. Right? So the executives have trouble too. Like, they need a little bit of grace. They're trying to learn. When I teach them, they are also awkward. And they're like, I brought in all these lean stuff. And then, so if your leader isn't here, this is my challenge to you. Think of a suggestion how to have a transformational conversation with them or with your colleague on how to improve something. Just take one small step. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. Sorry to rush us at the end there, but I wanted to answer a couple questions.
Jim, that was amazing. So I do see a question in here. I don't see too many, and we are very short for time. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to read this fast. Someone says, as a huge fan of Lean and other CI approaches my entire career, I too have been disappointed by the high number of failed efforts. Perhaps this will be addressed in this session, but while we as practitioners often point to leadership as a primary root cause, given that Lean failures are so common and most leaders are unwilling or incapable of leading the change, sadly, I have come to ask myself, perhaps Lean is not a viable approach, not worth the effort, cost, employee goodwill. It's a terrible question to ask, but what are your thoughts about that?
So is the idea that maybe, what's the meat of the question again?
The meat of the question, it sounds like they're saying, okay, hold on. We often point to leadership as a primary root cause, given that lean failures are common and most leaders may be unwilling to lead the change. And so this person is asking themselves, perhaps it's not a viable approach. Maybe it's not
Oh,
worth the
got it.
effort.
Okay. So is lean not worth the effort? Well, I mean, certainly I understand that. Is lean worth the effort? And you can look at companies that have implemented lean. You can look at, so I think the reason a lot of organizations believe that lean is worth the effort is because they see the amazing success of organizations that have implemented it, like Toyota, like Autoliv, and the many other examples of organizations that have implemented it. There are certainly huge factors that keep organizations from implementing radical and durable transformation. And there's lots of very unpopular reasons why organizations don't do lean in America. A lot of that is, the status quo of things and just a lot of reasons not to do it. But it is something that over the long term, 10 plus years, would make a company and the legacy of a company be put them way out ahead of everyone else. We just don't have a long-term view, for a lot of companies in this country. A lot of times we just really care about the, short-term annual returns.
Very true. Good answer. Thank you, Jim. That was all that we
Wish
have
we
for
had more
questions.
time.
I
Yeah,
know. Well,
awesome.
thankfully, I think you did so well. You hit it home so well with every slide and all the information that I think everybody just got full off your presentation. So we don't really have too many questions. So thank you so much,
Contact
Jim.
me if you have questions, email me. I'm happy to connect with all of you personally. It's awesome.
I'm pretty sure everyone's going to want to work with you now, Jim.